The Bible flows from the Old Testament to the New Testament with what seems like a seamless transition. One moment we read about the prophets of Israel, kings, and ancient laws. The next we find ourselves in Roman-occupied Judea with John the Baptist announcing the coming of the Messiah. But what happened in between? That's a 400-year gap known as the intertestamental period or the silent years because no prophetic books were added to the Bible during this time. Was God truly silent or is there more to the story? The truth is, this period was far from uneventful. It was a time of war, rebellion, the rise of new religious groups, and even the creation of some of the most mysterious ancient texts, the Dead Sea Scrolls. Let's dive into this fascinating forgotten history and uncover the missing years of the Bible. Chapter 1, The Silent Years. Why did God stop speaking? One of the biggest mysteries of the intertestamental period is why there were no new books of prophecy. In the Old Testament, God communicated through prophets like Isaiah, Jeremiah, and Daniel. But after the book of Malachi, the prophetic voices seemed to vanish. Many scholars believe that the end of prophecy came as a fulfillment of Malachi's words. Behold, I will send you Elijah the prophet before the great and terrible day of the Lord comes. Malachi 4-5. Some see John the Baptist as the Elijah figure who marks the end of this silent period. However, religious activity didn't stop. Instead, Jewish scholars, scribes, and priests continued studying the scriptures, debating theological ideas, and forming new religious sects. Some even wrote books that didn't make it into the official Bible, such as the books of Maccabees and the book of Enoch. Additionally, this period saw a shift from prophecy to interpretation. With no new direct messages from God, Jewish leaders focused on understanding and preserving the existing scriptures. The rise of the synagogue as a place of worship and learning became essential in Jewish life, setting the stage for future rabbinic traditions. So, while prophecy seemed to pause, history continued in full force. Chapter 2, The Rise of the Greeks and Romans. The world of the Old Testament was dominated by the Persian Empire, but after Malachi's time, a young conqueror named Alexander the Great changed everything. In 331 BC, Alexander swept across the Middle East, including Israel, bringing Greek language, culture, and philosophy. This had huge consequences for the Jewish people. Many adopted Greek customs and even translated the Hebrew scriptures into Greek, a version called the Septuagint. This translation later became crucial in the New Testament, as many quotes from the Old Testament are from this Greek version. After Alexander's death, his empire was divided among his generals. The Jewish people were caught in a power struggle between two factions: the Ptolemies of Egypt, who were relatively tolerant of Jewish traditions; the Seleucids of Syria, who were much more oppressive. The Seleucids, especially under Antiochus IV Epiphanes, attempted to force Greek culture onto the Jewish people, leading to tensions and resistance. Antiochus went so far as to outlaw Jewish religious practices and dedicate the temple in Jerusalem to Zeus. This extreme persecution set the stage for one of the most significant Jewish uprisings in history, the Maccabean Revolt. Chapter 3, The Maccabean Revolt in Hanukkah. By 167 BC, the Seleucid king Antiochus IV Epiphanes decided he had enough of Jewish traditions. He banned circumcision, outlawed the Torah, and even desecrated the temple in Jerusalem by sacrificing a pig on the altar to the Greek god Zeus. This was the last straw for the Jewish people. A group of Jewish fighters led by Judah Maccabee and his brothers launched a full-scale rebellion. Against all odds, they drove out the Seleucids, purified the temple, and restored Jewish worship. This event is celebrated today as Hanukkah, the Festival of Lights, which commemorates the miracle of the menorah oil lasting 8 days instead of 1. The Maccabees established the Hasmonean dynasty, an independent Jewish kingdom that ruled for about 100 years. However, internal conflicts and political corruption weakened them, making them easy prey for a growing superpower, Rome. During this period, Jewish religious life underwent major changes. The temple was rededicated, but the Jewish people remained divided over religious and political issues. Some saw the Hasmoneans as corrupt leaders, while others longed for a new Davidic king to restore Israel fully. Chapter 4, The Rise of the Pharisees, Sadducees, and Essenes. During this chaotic period, new religious movements formed, each interpreting Jewish law differently. These groups would play key roles in the New Testament era. The Pharisees, a group of strict religious leaders who emphasized following Jewish law and traditions. They clashed with Jesus frequently in the Gospels. They also promoted belief in angels, the resurrection of the dead, and an afterlife. The Sadducees, wealthy, priestly elites who controlled the temple but rejected beliefs like resurrection and angels. They cooperated with Rome to maintain their power. The Essenes, a mysterious, ultra-strict sect that withdrew from society, possibly responsible for writing the Dead Sea Scrolls. They lived in isolated communities, awaiting divine intervention to restore true worship. These groups shaped the religious climate of Jesus' time, setting the stage for the conflicts and debates seen in the New Testament. Chapter 5, The Mysterious Dead Sea Scrolls. One of the most exciting discoveries related to this period happened in 1947 when a young shepherd stumbled upon ancient scrolls hidden in caves near the Dead Sea. These texts, now known as the Dead Sea Scrolls, contain some of the earliest copies of the Hebrew Bible and shed light on Jewish beliefs during the intertestamental period. The scrolls were likely written by the Essenes, who viewed themselves as a holy remnant preparing for a coming apocalypse. Some even predicted a Messiah-like figure, which adds intriguing context to the arrival of Jesus just a few decades later. Though the Bible doesn't record new prophetic books during this period, history shows that it was anything but silent. The political, cultural, and religious shifts of the intertestamental period directly influenced the world Jesus entered. From the Greek influence on language and philosophy to the Roman roads that helped spread Christianity, God's hand seems to have been shaping events behind the scenes. The Jewish longing for a Messiah reached its peak during this time, making the arrival of Jesus all the more significant. The absence of prophecy was not an absence of divine action. Instead, it was a period of preparation. The Jewish people had experienced suffering, exile, war, and cultural changes, all of which set the stage for their spiritual expectations. By the time Jesus began his ministry, different sects like the Pharisees and Sadducees had shaped Jewish religious thought, and the teachings of the Torah had been deeply ingrained in their daily lives. Another fascinating element is how God used the political climate to facilitate his plan. The spread of Greek language made it easier for the gospel to be preached across different regions. The Roman Empire, though oppressive, built extensive road networks, allowing early Christians like Paul to travel efficiently and spread the message of Christ. Perhaps most importantly, this period created a hunger for divine intervention. The Jewish people were waiting for a deliverer, and when Jesus came, he challenged expectations. He was not a political revolutionary like Judah Maccabee, but a spiritual savior, offering a kingdom beyond this world. The intertestamental period may not have produced biblical texts, but it prepared hearts and minds for the greatest story ever told. God was never truly silent. He was setting the stage for redemption. So was this period truly a time of silence, or was it a grand setup for the most important story ever told? Drop your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more deep dives into biblical history.